Once again, this episode is being brought to you by Diesel Fuel Prints. Diesel Fuel has been in the business since 1991, and Andy has been printing all of my stickers since the early 2000s. He's been a guest on this show, and he's a friend and somebody I've worked with for a long time. So I can highly vouch for his business because I use it myself. Highest quality weatherproof stickers, easy online ordering, and quotes on any size and shape sticker you can think of. Full color printing and 125 black and white stickers start as low as $25. Free shipping on all orders at dieselfuelprints.com. And my listeners get a 10% discount if they use the promo code AWP 2021. Check out Andy and his stickers. He does a great job. Let's get to the episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. I'm your host, Mike Fisher, and today's guest is Dan Snow on episode 82, which will probably be the last episode for a while, and it may be the last episode I ever do of this particular podcast. Like I had mentioned in episode 80, and you'll hear on this episode, I've got so much work coming in that I don't have a lot of bandwidth to schedule guests and to sit down and talk to people and really do the show justice, which is what you guys deserve. That's the standard that I set, is that I put a lot of effort into making this a good show. So I don't want to taint that. So we're also doing a bunch of construction work on our house. And as you can see behind, I've got a lot of stuff in this office right now in the art studio. So episode 82 with Dan Snow, talking about the movie Maximum Overdrive, which is part 2 of the Stephen King episode we did on episode 81, where we talked about some of our favorite short stories by Stephen King. If you've never seen Maximum Overdrive, you should probably watch that movie before you do. It's a 40-year-old movie, 35-year-old movie. You should have seen it by now. And if you haven't, I don't know, I guess I kind of don't feel super bad about spoilers. And so, thanks again to everybody who's watched and listened to the show along the way. Enjoy this last episode with Dan Snow while we talk about Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive and a lot about AC/DC and Metallica somehow. All right, check you on the other side. Anyway, whatever. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. We're here for number 2 of the Dan Snow, Stephen King episodes, which very well may be the last 2 episodes of this show for the foreseeable future. If you've been listening, you know that going on hiatus for work reasons. I just have way too much work to do. I'm having work done on my house, and I have zero space and zero bandwidth to try to figure out how to keep booking guests and recording guests, and it's not fair to you guys if I'm not giving it my best effort. And this might be the last one for a little bit, maybe.
And we're going with some low hanging fruit.
Okay, yeah, you wanted to lead the parade on this one, man. What you got?
Okay, so we're gonna talk about Maximum Overdrive, the movie. It was released July 25th. 1986. This is Stephen King's only director credit. So,
hold on. Actually, 1 second. If you did not listen to the last episode, go back and listen to the last episode, because at the very end we talk about the story Trucks, which this movie was based on,
right.
Which was a very short story about how the trucks of the world try to take over humanity.
Yeah, they come to life and they kill people and all that stuff.
Yes. And if you've seen the movie Maximum Overdrive,
I'm sure
you already know that.
Exactly. And I'm sure most people listening have seen the movie, are familiar with it. So to put it in perspective, the other movies that came out that summer, Aliens, Club Paradise, Flight of the Navigator, Ferris Bueller, Back to School, Stand By Me comes out a couple months later. So that's what was happening. 86 was freaking massive. Right. So for some reason, so King,
that would have been the summer I started my first job, my first real job.
'86 is a big deal. That's when I moved to California. It was the Night Stalker. It was all that stuff.
I guess I was about to start my senior year of high school too.
Yeah.
Holy shizer.
That's when it was all happening.
My first job was at an ice rink, if you can imagine that.
Oh, makes sense.
Where my sister had already worked for a couple years. And then every single person in my family worked at that ice rink, including my mother and father, at some point over the course of 40 years.
That's amazing.
It's pretty crazy.
That's where you get your free ice time.
I got a lot of it, yeah.
So
I digress.
No, it's good.
Maximum Overdrive.
So Dino De Laurentiis is a producer. He made Firestarter. And so King was involved. And they wanted to make a movie together. And King, I am guessing King got to choose whatever he wanted to direct. Right? So there's a trailer for Maximum Overdrive, which is pretty amazing. And King is in it. And he kind of looks a little cross-eyed and a little crazy, right? But in it, he says, and I wrote it down exactly, a lot of people have directed Stephen King movies, but I finally decided that if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. He says that to the camera.
Famous last words.
Now, keep in mind, the King movies that were made prior to Maximum Overdrive are Carrie, The Shining, Cujo, Dead Zone, Christine, Children of the Corn, and Firestarter, and the Salem's Lot TV show in 1979.
That's a mixed bag for me of success and failure.
80% of those movies are pretty fucking good. I mean, Children of the Corn and Firestarter are probably the worst. Christine is funny. Dead Zone's amazing. Cujo's got its charm.
Dead Zone is so good. Dead Zone doesn't get enough credit for being as good as it is.
It is so good.
It's so creepy. It's so creepy and so good.
So he's saying,
he sucked and I'm going to give you the good stuff.
So what is he talking about? And we talked about in the last podcast, there's this notion out there that in the, Stephen King movies are bad. And this is, I think Maximum Overdrive is where that comes from. And I think it's his fault. So basically he chose it. He wrote it. He got to rewrite it to make it fit. And it's and he was completely, there's differing stories about whether he was on coke or whether he was just drunk the whole time or what. But he may have been a little over his head. And so, yeah, that's my setup for Maximum Overdrive, which they shot in North Carolina. So
was it North or South?
North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
And
I know it was somewhere near, there was some stuff in the Cape Fear River.
Yes.
Which is Cape Fear, South Carolina, I think.
So
at any rate,
it's goofy, man. It's a goofy project from the get-go.
Well, to speak a little bit of some of the legends that I've read about the production of that was, he said himself that he was on a massive cocaine bender during that, which makes sense to how some of it turned out. But there were other people on set who said they never saw him do cocaine, but he would start drinking beer at 6 a.m.
Right.
And by the time they started rolling tape, he'd be 10 beers in at 9 in the morning. That's that's pretty legendary.
Yeah.
And that he was just always fucking off on set, racing the go-karts or the golf carts around and which I kind of like. I like that. He has a little cameo in the beginning, right at the beginning where an ATM, the first machine you see, kind of being autonomous is an ATM machine that calls him an asshole.
Yeah. And there's a big flashing "fuck you" on the banner outside the bank. And so basically they set the movie up where you get this shot of the earth and then you get this huge block of text, explaining what's happening.
Yeah. Which is never a good sign.
There's this really bad green visual effect around the earth. And it says the earth is in a comet's tail. And it says for how many days, hours, minutes, and seconds. It's so corny. But then it goes right into Yeah, like his stuff with the bank and everything, and then you get to cut to who made who for the title sequence. So I can imagine, like, when they were showing it to people or when they were showing it to the studio or getting notes, you know, they were probably pretty fired up because they had big car crashes and like AC/DC's playing. So I don't know. He must have been really stoked on it, I would think, at least the beginning.
Yeah, that's like a thing about Stephen King that probably a lot of people don't know or appreciate is he's like a total rocker.
Yes.
Like a lot of his books have quotes from rock songs in them.
Yeah.
At you know, as forward pages and stuff, especially The Stand. It's like every chapter has some rock and roll. So he's like, you know, he's a legit AC/DC fan. I know one of the reasons why, you know, the Ramones did the Pet Sematary song was that he's an absolute Ramones fan.
Yeah, and there's pictures of him at a Rancid show with Lars and Tim, and they all took pictures together. So it's like he walks the walk when it comes
King's
to the music. Yeah, exactly.
I love it. I fucking love it. So yeah, AC/DC's like Emilio Estevez is the star of the movie, but AC/DC is his co-star.
Yeah, probably.
I mean,
so
it's like
Emilio. Here's what he had just done prior to this movie. First of all, Stephen King wanted to cast Bruce Springsteen, by the way.
I heard that.
Yeah, he wanted Bruce. That was his first choice. Dino De Laurentiis said, no, you're getting Emilio. Emilio was red hot. He was coming off of Outsiders, Repo Man, Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire. And he was dating Demi Moore at the time they were in production. He was a fucking star.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was... Yeah, I guess that would have been like... It's at the height of
that's as big as he gets. It's before, yeah, Young Guns is coming up, and it's like, but he's like a top 10 movie star, and he's in Maximum Overdrive.
Okay, first of all, just between the two of us, I don't like the tone of your voice about this movie. I feel like I can tell how you feel about it. I don't think I like it very much, to be honest with you.
I'm not attacking the movie, but you know. Hindsight it's kind of rough. The lens of history, you know, looking back, there's some missed opportunities there, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not coming at the movie though, but I love everything.
Fine. You do whatever you want.
I love everything around it. I love all these little pieces of trivia and all the stuff. So
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. And the audience is one of the reasons why I was like, well, we have to talk about trucks because we have to talk about Maximum Overdrive is that I found a piece of art that is like a Blu-ray cover. That's like a painting for the Blu-ray cover. That's such a killer, amazing piece of art that I was like, I need to talk about the movie so that I can use this as like this image as like a promo image.
Is it the one with the body and the grill of the truck?
Yes,
put it
it's
up,
so
right?
good.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's pretty good.
It's so good. It's
pretty
so good. It's such an
Yeah.
amazing piece of art.
Yeah.
For a movie that may or may not warrant that level of of production value. You know, if we're just gonna dig right in,
Let's talk about it.
First of all, you are correct. When you have to put up a big piece of text that explains before you've shown any scenes of the movie what is going to be happening, you're probably off to a rocky start.
It's that best. Show me, don't tell me. Well, they're just gonna tell you.
Yeah, I think there's like a famous, I don't know who is by. There's some famous quote from some director. It's like, if you have to use voiceover to tell your story, you've already ruined everything. Right. Like, don't do it. And this is like worse than that because it's like Star Wars is the only movie in history that made that work.
Yeah, and they tell you exactly what's happening. So yeah,
we're in the southern eastern seaboard, and we're in the tail of a comet, and all of the machines of the world. Which is probably why they didn't call it trucks, is that it's any mechanical device. It's not just vehicles in the movie.
Yeah, Maximum Overdrive is a pretty good name. It's pretty metal.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like an AC/DC song just
It does.
on its own.
Right. Which is weird. Like, well, we'll get into that, but yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like we kind of gradually escalate the attacks of the machines onto people,
right?
Until it's just like full scale mayhem, and all of the characters we're in different characters' worlds, figuring out how they end up together,
right.
Which is pretty well done from a directorly standpoint. And they all end up at this massive truck stop. It's like a restaurant truck stop. And they're kind of all stuck in this building together, trying to figure out what the hell is going on,
right?
And how they're going to survive it. And it's like, it's a cast of very colorful characters. There's the bad guy owner who's exploiting the employees, and Emilio's character is an ex-convict who's being exploited.
Yep.
Got the runaway girl, or the hitchhiking girl who's with the skeevy Bible salesman, little kid whose dad works at the gas station, who gets killed, and now he's on his own because its dad's a single dad. I'm noticing a single dad theme.
A little bit.
Single dad, single mom. Like almost all the stories we talked about, there was a single parent.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's another thing we figured out. And then there's like, the regulars at the truck stop, etc. And a mayhem ensues.
Yeah. And they have one of, though, I will say probably, and you let me know what you think about this, but one of the best props in a movie ever is the Green Goblin truck.
Oh yeah.
So iconic, and they could use it in all the ads and the trailers, and it's like doesn't really mean anything, but it's just embodies what's going on, and it's just so visual and awesome.
Yeah, it's like it was a genius move in that you had to humanize at least one vehicle so that people would feel like it was a character. Because like you could put 100 diesel trucks in a movie and nobody's going to be able to we needed a leader of the bad guy trucks.
Yep.
And it was such an amazing piece of prop design.
It's awesome.
Which is, obviously I'm kind of going down that road with my career. Yeah. So it's notable to me. I actually saw a story that came up in my newsfeed about some guy who has one of the original fiberglass faces and restored it and put it on the actual correct model truck. And he's got this showpiece of I can't remember what the toy company, it's like a toy company truck.
Right. And
it's got this Green Goblin face, but yeah, I guess he's, and all of the artwork on the truck that is supposed to be for a kid's toy.
It's super scary.
Company is
crazy clown. Yeah.
There's this crazy clown on the back that's got gangster murder tattoo tears on its face.
Yep.
Prison tattoos. So yeah, that's the Nemesis truck. Anybody who's listening to this, seen the movie, you know exactly what we're
the
talking
truck
about.
Yeah,
even if you've never seen the movie, you know that truck.
Exactly.
It's interesting. A thing that I don't think I paid attention to as much before as I did this time is that it's in my mind, it was it's all the trucks of the world that are, but it's the lawnmower is involved, airplanes involved, the sprinklers.
That part cracked me up when the kid was riding his bike and the sprinklers go off and on. It's okay.
And it's
mischievous lawn sprinklers.
And there's a girl with a hair dryer, and it's the cord is choked her. And at first I was I guess just to be upfront, I absolutely love Maximum Overdrive.
Of course.
I love it. I consider it one of my favorite movies. Regardless of how cheesy and shitty it is, I probably love it more because of that.
Right.
But it was also came out when I was at the age where I was reading Stephen King books as soon as I was done with one, I was picking up the next book. And it was like, there was like probably 5 years of my life where it was a constant reading of Stephen King. So this was like, I was just at the age where it was like, yeah, this is awesome. And it's got rock and music and, and it was like just that whole thing, you know what I mean? But it was like, I think that if I was going to have a technical storyline problem with it, it's that they kind of break their own rules about what can and can't kill you a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I don't like, because I can understand in some weird world where there's a comet going around the earth, where things that are motorized could kill you with their motorization. You know what I mean? Like the fact that they have a motor, the motor itself can drive the object to kill you.
Right.
The sprinklers don't have a motor.
Right.
There's no way that a sprinkler you could never take over that because it doesn't have a motor. And then it's like, like the cord of the hairdryer, there's nothing that can drive that cord to choke somebody. You could have burned her face off with it, and I would have bought it because the motor inside of the hairdryer could have gotten so hot. But to choke her with, there was a little bit of that, and it's like, that's soda
deep.
Machine.
That's really deep. You're making a distinction between the electric knife, which is a knife and a motor going into her arm, and the cord, which is more like a ghost doing something.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Like, well, that's how much I love this
You're
movie.
really taking it to the movie.
I was like, well, this is the thing that comes a little bit from me, from character design in video games and in animation, is that you have to set the rules for
That's a big deal.
Your character's universe and what can and can't happen there.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Like if you have 2 dogs, you cannot have one of them be human, like an anthropomorphic dog,
right,
and then one of them be a pet dog.
Right.
Disney's the only people who are ever able to do that. And then that brings up the controversy of, is Goofy actually a dog or is Goofy some other kind of creature? But
free Goofy.
Digress. So like, when I'm sitting there poring over it for the conversation I'm going to have with Dan Snow, that is where I'm looking for something to be critical about. That's where I'm coming down.
Okay.
Yes.
That's not bad.
Because the rest of it just suffers from it kind of being like a cash in on Stephen King and Emilio Estevez. And, so there's a lot of, I feel like there was probably a lot of the things that weren't great about it were budgetary because budget went somewhere else. And so like, maybe the set could have been better, or maybe some of the stunts could have been better,
right?
Because there's a lot of stuff that's like, well, I can see the pad that they just landed on when the truck blew up and they flew
or when
in the air, I can see it's like, I'm a stickler for that shit anyway, but in a movie like this is like, it's just so built into the overall legend of the movie to me that I don't,
right.
It's just not super bothersome.
Well, I think also that Stephen King as a person, and I'm just spitballing here, but he's kind of like a goofball, and like his sensibilities, like in Creepshow, when he plays, like whenever he's on camera, he fucking hams it up. Like he has no chill, Yeah. And so if you picture him running a set with all of this at his disposal, and he's the guy, and De Laurentiis has his back, he's going to do goofy shit. And he does. Like, all the stunts and all the gags are like, what, dude? Like, it's just, and I just picture him being there going like, and now do one more, and just make it a little bit bigger, and blah, blah, blah. And that's going to be the thing, because nobody's going to tell him not to do it.
Totally, dude. I totally can. You can totally see that where he's like, okay, one more, but just a little bit more like funny.
Yeah.
And then
it's like, is it funny
when they were
or is it
cutting the
corny?
film?
Yeah.
And when they're cutting the film, he's like, use that one.
Right. Exactly.
Because it is funny that how corny something will be, and then how deadly serious somebody is trying to be, like in just the next scene, where it's like, I just don't know, man.
Right.
It's like it's like they go from like the
Yeah, like
fucking
with the boss
Bible
and his-
sales.
Yeah.
The Bible salesman getting knocked out of his shoes by the truck, and then and then the half dead man terrorizing the child in the drainage ditch.
But then, like, remember, like in the book, there was a guy in a ditch who, like, 2 pages later, you just assumed he was dead. He starts moaning. Remember?
Well, that's the same thing as in the movie.
Yeah, and it's like, oh man, like that's fucking dark. But in the movie, it's kind of like, oh, that dude's still alive. Like, it's kind of like silly. I don't
We
know.
thought that shitbird was dead.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, one of my main sponsor for this show is Diesel Fuel Prince.
Yep.
And Andy Diesel and I have been friends forever. And we were talking, he's like, I've never watched Maximum Overdrive, when I was talking to him about something. And I was like, what? And he's like, I can't stand Yardley Smith's voice.
It's bad.
He's like, I can't stand it. And I tried to watch that movie once, and they have her shrieking so much that I had to turn it off.
She screams the whole time.
And it's like half of it you can tell was done in recording session after and dubbed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, it's pretty grim. She's
The whole mix
probably
is-
the only character that I'm like, they could have cast her better.
Yeah.
Or different, at least.
Everything is really hot. Way up.
Yeah.
And her voice just cuts, man. Oh my gosh.
She's like Lisa Simpson on 10.
Yeah. Because you can still hear the Lisa Simpson,
Yeah.
but I don't think she has a normal spoken line in the movie. She's either
she's
yelling
screaming.
at her fiance or her husband, or yelling at the people, and oh my gosh, it's definitely like when she's on, it's a problem.
There's one scene where her and her husband are newlyweds, and they're like literally leaving their wedding to go on their honeymoon when all of this happens, and they end up in this but there's like one scene where she's like giving her new husband a complete ration of shit.
Oh man.
And he has a look on his face where I don't know if it's intentional, if it's me applying it, but he has a look on his face like, this is going to be the rest of my life. This is the decision I've made, and now this is going to be the rest of my life.
Yeah. So in that regard, she does a good job.
Yeah. Well, I think that was probably supposed to be that way, right? This
Right.
like supposed to be the over the top, like young. Yeah. One of the other things that was so funny is how quickly the Emilio character, what's his name? Billy?
Yeah.
Billy and the hitchhiker girl like strike up like
Oh yeah.
a full-blown relationship,
Very fast.
like within like 6 hours.
Yeah.
Within 6 hours, they're feeding each other in the booth. Like they've known each other for 3 years.
Well, I mean, there's not a lot of time. You know, it's like stunt set up, and they have a couple minutes. They have some nice moments where they're in some sleeping bags or something, and that's it. They're good to go. They're a team.
Yeah. You know, the other character that is borderline almost intolerable is the owner, Bubba Hendershot.
Yeah.
He's such a caricature of like
With the cigar.
a
and,
shitty Southern,
Yeah.
you know, he's almost like the fucking warden in Cool Hand Luke.
Right,
It's
exactly,
Like, he's like
yeah.
that level of villain, but he's
Yeah.
just a gas station owner.
He has all these guns, though.
I wish they would have explained more about where the entire armory
Yeah. Why is that?
of including rocket launchers,
Yeah.
and every gun under the sun just happened to be in the basement of the Dixie Boy gas up.
Yeah.
A thing that I never noticed ever before. I bet I've seen Maximum Overdrive 20 or 30 times, like so many times. I never noticed that there's a scene right before the waitress goes out and gets herself lit up.
Yep.
She comes out of a room with Bubba and they're both getting dressed.
Oh.
And I was
really?
like, but her husband works there as a mechanic.
Yeah. So they needed to make that guy even more unlikable?
Yes.
Oh
and
my
she's
gosh.
like coming out and like buttoning up his shirt, and he's like zipping his pants up. And I'd never noticed it until this time. And I was like, God, that Bubba Hendershot's even worse than I thought.
I think I missed that subtext.
And that waitress, her overacting is absolutely fantastic.
She's the one that screams like, when she's screaming like, we made them. That one. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's just like contortions.
Look, I'm not saying that there should be any subtlety on a movie called Maximum Overdrive, but all his performances are cranked up, man. It's a loud movie.
They really are. And it's also part of the Emilio phase where he was only ever in white jeans and a white or blue jeans and
a white beater.
501s and a white t-shirt.
Yep.
It's like 5 movies in a row where he had just that wardrobe and Chuck Taylor's.
It worked, man.
It's like, and it went all the way from like the 1960s Outsiders to
St. Elmo's Fire. Like, yeah, same thing.
I think it's St. Elmo's Fire. They had him in normal
Get him a jacket.
And then he became Coach Bombay, and he was in suits, and that's where it ended for Emilio. Did I ever tell you this my story about me and Emilio? My one interaction with him in the real world.
Do tell, man. This might be your last episode, so get it out. Tell the people.
I people who aren't familiar with Los Angeles, I live in what is known as the West San Fernando Valley, and it's far away from the regular city, but it's not. It's like 25 miles. But by car in LA traffic, it's an hour and a half. Sometimes it could be longer than that, right. Depending. So I had to go every day from Woodland Hills all the way to Century City. We were located in Century City, and so my commute was horrifying.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just, I mean, it was 3 hours of my day, an hour and a half in each direction every single day.
And what year when was this? This
was like 99, 2000.
This was before podcasts.
Oh yeah.
You're just sitting there listening to music.
So I was at a job where I was making, and it was the most I've ever made as a salary ever in my life. And so I was like, well, if I have to do this drive, I'm going to buy myself a sick vehicle, something that I want to be in every single day. So bought a Chevy truck, lowridered it, had the banging system. And I was like, yes, now I'm just going to drive my lowrider pickup truck back and forth to Century City every day and listen to music. And at least this will be somewhat bearable. So I'm sitting on Santa Monica Boulevard. I'm about to get on the 405 North. And it's just, you have to sit at this red light, and it's just like, you're going to be there for 30 minutes every single day. And so I had the windows down, and I was like just absolutely cranking death metal out of my black tinted windowed lowrider truck. And there's a Range Rover next to me, and I'm just doing my thing. I'm not paying attention. And then all of a sudden I hear somebody go, "Hey!" And I look over, the fucking Emilio Estevez and his wife are in this Range Rover. And I think he was no longer with Paul Abdul. I can't recall, but my window was down, and I was letting my hatred out onto the world through the music in my car as much as I could. So I didn't take it out on other drivers. And he's like, hey. And so I turned down. He's like, "What are you listening to?" And I was like, I think I was listening to this band called Deeds of Flesh, just like brutal death metal band from Central California. And I was like, "Oh, it's this band Deeds of Flesh." And he's like, "I've never heard anything like that. That's crazy." Like, and I was like, "Yeah, man, it's how I get through this commute without running other cars off the road." And he was like just laughing. And so we were kind of stuck next to each other. We were just like having this chit chat about death metal. And then like the light turned and I got on the freeway and he kept going down Santa Monica. And that was my experience.
That's brilliant.
With him in the wild. And he was like laughing the whole time. And his like trademark, laugh that he has that's
fantastic.
If I ever run into him again, I'm going to bring it up and see if he remembers.
Good job, Emilio. That is so good.
Yeah. So to touch back on the AC/DC thing, because it's kind of on theme with the music. You know, a movie's going to have a lot of music from a particular artist when in one of the first scenes there is a van with their logo painted across the entirety of the side of the van.
Great. So,
and
go ahead.
AC/DC is the only band on the soundtrack. They're 100% of the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. I love it.
Shocking. And so my assumption always was that they got AC/DC to do the soundtrack, and one of the, like, Mutt Lange or somebody was like, sure, I'll send you some songs and then I'll send you some riffs. And they were just going to pepper those things in throughout the movie. And then they kept using, they got to use Shook Me All Night Long and all that stuff. But recently I found a video on YouTube of Stephen King talking to AC/DC via some kind of satellite, where Stephen King, he's on like a set and he's introducing a video or something, but he's talking to Brian Johnson and Angus Young, and they're like in front of like the Thames or something in London. And Stephen King's like, hey dudes, like, thanks for doing the music for my movie. And it's like, it's on YouTube. You can find it. It's like so degraded.
This was like during the 80s when
this was when it was coming out. This is when he was probably doing press for the movie, for Maximum Overdrive. And they were all like, you can never understand what those guys are saying anyways. And they were like, oh, great, mate. Like, it was great. But you could hear Brian Johnson say that he was like, yeah, we watched it and we saw the little numbers on the bottom, which to me means time code, which means that they were actually in a studio watching the movie and putting their music to the movie, which I never thought was even like that they would even think about doing. So then when I'm watching the movie again, I was like, oh, I can hear it now. So when something happens bad, they react to it by, you hear this thing go, gak, 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 gak. And it's basically like Brian Johnson and Angus just sitting there watching the movie and like doing these like beats. Like they think, because they don't know what they're doing. Like they don't score movies. And it just really made my day to like find this video and realize that they did actually go through the effort to go into a studio and try to score the movie. And it's awesome.
That's hilarious, dude.
It's
because
so good.
like if you're watching it, you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
You could be like, oh, they just took a bunch of AC/DC songs and threw it in. But when you start watching it closer, there are like these little doom riffs.
Yep.
Like there's like a truck on Creep, and it's just like, it's like there'll be like an Angus riff, like gong, gang, gong, 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 gong. It's like, it was clearly written. Like they could have sat any guitar player in a studio and said, give me some little Angus riffs.
Totally.
And like, but they didn't. They actually got Angus to do it.
Yeah.
They could have totally cheaped that out, and they didn't. And there's so many places they cheap out in the movie.
Right.
I
can't even imagine how much money they gave AC/DC to do this. But so here's what happened. So they made the Who Made Who was called the official soundtrack of Maximum Overdrive. So they wrote,
which is great.
Yeah, they wrote the song Who Made Who, which is, a great AC/DC song. They wrote two other instrumentals, and then everything else on the album is just old songs that they already had. So they put out You Shook Me All Night Long, and in this weird clip where they're talking to Stephen King, they're laughing about how they're going to make another video for You Shook Me All Night Long. Because if you remember, the first one is the one where Brian Johnson's in a bathtub. And it's
and the girl's like on the mechanical bull or whatever.
And then the second one, they're all in like, there's like girls like riding these like exercise bikes or something. But anyway, so You Shook Me All Night Long was on Back in Black, which was what, 83 or something?
Oh, God. It might have been 81.
Yeah, but it was 82. Earlier.
Yeah,
but then they re-released it, and then AC/DC got popular again. Like, I remember, because I'd moved from Illinois to Chicago, to L.A., and I remember seeing You Shook Me All Night Long videos, and I'm like, that's weird. Like, this song was already popular, and now it's popular again, and everyone's listening to AC/DC again, and there's stories about how it kind of, like, resurrected their career. Like, they had sort of been through the Back in Black phase, and they were kind of like, the record sales were going down, and then Who Made Who comes out and it goes right back up again. How about that? Just because they re-released it. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty funny.
Well, there's kind of like a legendary thing with AC/DC that they know how to get paid to license their songs, and they will not compromise that. They won't compromise it.
Right.
It's kind of famous that one of the very first Beastie Boys 12-inch singles was Rock Hard.
Yep.
And it used the Back in Black riff as like the bed. And the reason you cannot find that on any Beastie Boys retrospective or release or anything is the AC/DC would never ever clear that sample ever for the Beastie Boys. You can find it on YouTube.
Right.
There's versions of it that are out, but you can't find it in any official capacity. And it's like,
right. It's not on Spotify. Or anything.
AC/DC is like no joke. I think I read somewhere that they're like second or third only to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones for profitability for music artists. Like they're up there with Michael Jackson,
right.
the Beatles. Like that's insane. And I think they hold some records for like maybe live ticket sales or something where it's like,
well, I mean, Back in Black was such a big album.
Oof.
And it's just like, and you're right. I don't think, I'm trying to think of instances where I've heard their stuff in ads and it's always like big stuff. Yeah. So for them to do this movie,
the budget had to have been like all them, Emilio, and Stephen King.
Right.
Like
that's it.
70% of the budget is those three places,
right.
And then all the rest we'll try to make a movie with whatever is left of those peanuts. I was AC/DC was the band that turned me onto music in a way that was the first thing for me. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't a band that my dad liked. It wasn't, like I liked stuff. I liked cool music because my dad liked cool music. But AC/DC was the first band I found on my own through kids I played hockey with before Brian Johnson was in the band, when it was Bon Scott was the singer. Like
right.
Highway to Hell was like the first record that I ever like begged for and got from my parents.
Yeah.
And so I was like a huge AC/DC fan. And then Bon Scott died. They got Brian Johnson. And I, at the time, really did like Back in Black, probably more than I expected because I was like, new singer, I don't know. But he was fine. And then I just got they were so huge that I did that thing that you do when you're a kid when the rest of the world finds out about your cool thing. Yeah. And then you can't like it anymore. Right. That happened to me with Metallica too. It was like, the kids who were beating me up for being for wearing like a Metallica t-shirt, like a year later were like, wearing Metallica t-shirts. Like, but yeah, so AC/DC like lost its flavor for me for a long time. And it was like they were one of those bands that was like in my back pocket always, where it's like, I only like Bon Scott stuff. I only like the Bon Scott stuff. And then I'd hear the same songs.
Yeah.
It'd be like, you know what? For Those About to Rock is a fucking good song.
Right.
And when I was a kid, I was a shithead and didn't like it because for no good reason.
I just feel like Brian Johnson's voice after Back in Black, which is great. I just feel like his voice was just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And then by the time Thunderstruck comes around, it's like, what am I listening to? What is this?
Here's my going backwards. My experience with the AC/DC is whatever the title track is on every one of their records is probably the only good song on the record. So like Thunderstruck's great, right? And, and like Who Made Who's great, right? And like that's just kind of I feel like they were the first band, at least in my awareness, who like they had a huge hit with Back in Black, and then every record was just make Back in Black and change the names of the songs.
Right.
You need to have a slow one. You need to have like a bluesy one. You need to have a big arena rocker. And it was like, they just kept doing that record after record after record. And it made that annoyed me. And it still annoys me because it infected the entire industry. And then even bands like Slayer were doing it. And bands that I liked, that I cared about, started doing that thing where it was like, this keep putting out the same record.
Right, but
we'll
then
water it down a teeny bit each time.
But then Metallica goes and makes very different music, and yet we don't like it.
Well, that's because, I mean, I know what my problem is with current Metallica. It's very simple. I do not like the way he sings anymore.
Okay.
That's it. I think the songs are still good.
Yeah.
I think the production sometimes is a little wonky.
Yeah.
On purpose, which is stupid. I think that, like, was it Death Magnetic? Like,
Yep.
I think was their last full length. And I was like, God damn, if he would just even go back to singing like he did on the Black album, this would be such a great album. But
the last one's good. The Hardwired's good. He sounds more like himself.
Oh,
on
is
Hardwired.
that? No, Hardwired is the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I listened to it and I was like, you know what? I can actually boil it down even more than that. They don't have the roar. As a band, there's no roar there. The thing that made Metallica so great in their prime, even on the Black album, is they were so powerful. And now everything's like plinky, like it doesn't have the roar. Even I mean, I guess the production's a little better on some of the newer stuff, but I don't know. Metallica's a whole different story.
Get it off your chest, man.
But AC/DC kind of created that, like, put out the same record formula over and over.
They really did start
for rock music.
I agree.
And so, but I do love AC/DC, and I had a friend of mine, Adam Siegel from The Faction, shout out Adam, and Punk Rock Saves Lives. He lives in Vegas and he's in LA quite a bit for, fun stuff. He's like the dude who's at the age now where he makes enough money. He can go anywhere and do anything he wants.
Great.
And so, he's in town for Kings games or whatever. And he hit me up and he's like, hey, me and 3 of my friends were coming to LA to see AC/DC at Dodger Stadium, and one of them can't make it and I have a ticket. Do you want to go? And this is when I was living walking distance to Dodger Stadium.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, you guys show up early. This is my neighborhood. We'll go out. We'll drink beer. We'll have food. We'll walk over. It'll be a whole night. It'll be awesome. But I wasn't expecting anything from AC/DC. I was like, I just want to hang out with my friends. And, I like AC/DC enough. This should be fun. But I'd never been to a concert of that level, of that size in my entire life. To see them at Dodger Stadium in that format, I was fucking blown away, man. I was like, oh.
Right, I get it now. Yeah.
I get why people like bands like this, because they will put on a show like this in a place like this, and will fucking make your fucking jaw drop,
Yep.
And that rekindled for me a little bit of my AC/DC love. And then, like, I think it was on that tour when Brian Johnson had the ear problems, and then luckily I didn't have to sit through Axl Rose singing for AC/DC, which he finished out that tour.
Can't even imagine that.
People said he did a good job, but there was no way I was gonna. His voice makes me insane as it is. Like, I cannot stand Guns N' Roses. I shouldn't say that. His voice drives me crazy. The Appetite for Destruction is a almost perfect rock and roll record, and I'm about to run out of battery. Let me go grab a battery real quick.
Oh, fantastic.
And we'll wrap it up. Okay, so that's the second battery failure we've suffered. So I think it's time to wrap this thing up.
It's a sign. It's the machines. The machines.
Yep. Is there a comet? Is there an 8-day, 20-hour, 14-minute, and 32-second comet?
Put some text
going
up.
over and this shitty green glow. That is, I mean, if that isn't the worst fucking Band-Aid on a movie I've seen in a minute. But hey, like I was saying, I absolutely love this movie. I will always watch it when it's on. I'll probably, now that I own it on Amazon Prime, I will probably watch it at least once a year because it makes me feel good. I'm the type of person who, will watch something I've watched a million times rather than watch something new, because it's comforting, because I know what to expect, and I'm not going to get, it's like an anxiety reliever to reread books or to, rewatch films or listen to records, because sometimes you don't have the bandwidth to take in new information and to be surprised by things. And sometimes it's just better to put something on that you love.
I may not watch it for a while.
Yeah, I probably won't. It'll probably be a few years because I've now watched it twice in the last like 4 months, that's probably good for a little while.
That's good. Yeah, leave it there. Leave it where it is.
But for me, it is a perfectly flawed film for me.
I see what you mean.
As a Stephen King fan, I feel like it was entertaining. It's not a great movie. It's not an Oscar winning movie or anything, but sometimes you need those too.
Yeah. And it's very 1986. It is very of the time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Dan, I appreciate you coming on and being my last guest for the last 2 episodes. We'll see if the show comes back, and if it does, you will be back as always.
Congrats,
AWP
man.
for life.
It was a good run, man. You should be very proud.
82 episodes. You were at episode 81 and 82. So yeah, I think considering I think there's a stat that like 50% never get past 8 episodes. 50% of all podcasts never do more than 8 episodes because people just quit.
Wow.
And so I'm going to feel pretty good at 10 times that amount.
That's great. Awesome. Good job, man.
Thanks. And thank you. And thanks everybody for listening for all this time. I have an amazing group of listeners that is a core group I can always count on. And I appreciate it. And because this is a Stephen King, Dan Snow episode, that number will probably be double what it normally is. These episodes always do really well, which is great because it gives me incentive to chat with you more. Although now that the pandemic is coming to a close and we can actually be around other people, we will have to hang out very soon.
Yeah, we'll just go talk about this stuff in a bar.
And annoy Mark Jensen and Kyle McKinnon.
That's right.
Over some beers in Jensen's pool.
I love it.
All right, Dan, I'll talk to you soon, man.
Okay, thanks.